Hi, I'm Moshe, and I'm autistic.
I'm Leah, and I'm boring. Welcome to the Now You Know One Autistic podcast.
The opinions expressed in this podcast reflect one autistic and one Leah, and don't necessarily reflect the entire autistic community.
Let's get to it. Hi, Moshe.
Hi, Leah.
How are you, honey?
I'm great, thanks.
So today, we're going to do a spicy episode.
Really?
Yes.
That'll be fun.
So we're doing a spicy episode, which should be listened to by people 18 or older. If you're a bit younger, you might get something out of it, but you have to have somebody near you that you can ask questions to.
And why are we making this episode a spicy episode?
Because we're talking about kind of graphic sexual themes.
I see.
And not the whole time, but there's some in there.
Should be a lot of fun. And I mean, in terms of why we're doing an episode about sex when we're talking about neurodivergency and autism and autistic adults and such. The reason for that is because when we're discussing relationships in general, especially when it comes to neurodivergence and neurotypicals and autistics and non-autistics, you really can't discuss relationships sort of up to a certain point and then just kind of leave it there. You have to go the next step. So we thought that discussing sex and sexual ideas and feelings would be important.
We had always had a few episodes about sex, intimacy, and different challenges planned.
Right.
But I was doing research and I found this really cool tool that I thought would be fun for us to do together and for the listeners to actually hear, which is I actually found a questionnaire that was used in a research project. And it was used in a research project to see the difference between the emerging sexuality in older teenagers and younger adults. And the sample happened to be people with ASD versus people without ASD.
So it sort of compares the way that people without ASD feel about certain concepts versus the way people with ASD feel. I don't know if we talked about this before we did this, but was this, in the opinion of the people who were giving the survey, was this like a good sample of people?
It wasn't a huge sampling. It was about, I think, 100 to 150 people altogether. And there were definitely more neurotypical people who answered than autistic, but they had a good sampling of autistics if you talk about percentage-wise. And they did publish in terms of percentages. So it's good enough.
It's good enough.
So it didn't say like 10 out of 10 people. It said this many percentage of autistics feel this way. This many percentage of non-autistics feel this way.
Now, is this a scientific sample?
It is, yeah.
It is.
It's a scientific study.
So, and just like the theme of the podcast, Now You Know One Autistic, as you'll see as we go through the questions, certain things are like right on the money when it comes to where I stand and where you stand and where the average people with ASD would stand and where maybe neurotypicals would stand. But some things are really off because even with scientific samples, there's always going to be anomalies where certain people feel certain ways about other things.
Well, I thought it would be really fun for me to ask you and then see how you compared to the ASD sample.
Right.
Because for one, it's kind of interesting because these people are much younger than you, so some things won't really apply, but you can answer based on how you felt that time.
If I can remember.
And also, I feel like even amongst the atypical, you're atypical. So let's see how in agreement you are with these people.
Sounds good.
Okay. So let's start with question one. It's not a spicy one. We'll start slow. I rarely or sometimes socialize with people other than my family.
What was the option?
It's just an agree-disagree scale.
Agree-disagree.
Yeah.
Okay. So could you repeat the question?
I rarely or sometimes socialize with people other than my family.
Rarely or sometimes associate with people.
Socialize. Not associate, but socialize specifically.
I would say yes.
Right. That's right on the money. 45.6% of autistics agreed with that, whereas only 8.7% of non-autistics agreed with that.
Correct.
Now we're moving into, this is a subcategory called views about romantic relationships. The first one is, I believe that being in a long-term relationship in the future is important.
At the time that I was the age of the people who were taking the survey, I would definitely have said yes.
Right. And now you would probably also say yes.
I would hope so.
Not necessarily. So that's pretty much an even spread. 80.9% of autistics agreed with that, whereas 91.3% of non-autistics agreed with that. So it was pretty high for both.
Mm-hmm.
The things that make up a good romantic relationship include that my significant other and I, number one, get along.
Yes.
That is basically agreed upon by everyone. Regularly speak with one another.
Yeah.
67.6% of autistics versus 82.7% of non-autistics.
That's interesting. So people with autism or autistic.
Like 32% of autistics don't think it's important to speak to their significant other.
It's interesting. I don't know how a relationship can be sustained without speaking, maybe associating, maybe engaging in common interests without talking. I don't know.
Or maybe the way they view speak is different. Like when they hear speak, maybe they mean like a deep conversation, whereas
Right.
a non-autistic person might just take it as talking to them.
Right.
Spending a lot of time together.
Yes.
61.8% of autistics, 44.3% of non-autistics. So non-autistics want to spend less time with their person. That's also interesting.
It is interesting. I think the definition of a relationship might be the verbiage that was used. The people that want like a long-term relationship would only assume that spending time with the person would be necessary, whereas non-autistics may view a relationship as something where they don't necessarily have to spend all of their time with their partner.
But it seems to be the other way. Neither seems that it's that important to them, but autistics actually agreed 20% more with the fact that it's important to spend a lot of time together.
Interesting.
Feeling emotionally close with each other.
Yes.
67.6% of autistics, 76.9% of non-autistics.
Right.
Kiss, hug, holding hands, etc.
Yes.
That's interesting. Only 35.3% of autistics felt that way, whereas 54.8% of non-autistics felt that way.
It's still rather strange that, only 54% of non-autistics felt that like kissing and hugging was necessary in a long-term relationship.
Engaging in sexual behaviors together.
See, that question kind of confuses me a little bit.
We talked about that earlier, right? When you're in a romantic relationship, most people assume that it's going there.
So sexual behaviors. I mean, I would have said yes, and I still say yes. Now.
Is it the term behavior that's unclear?
Yes. Because for me, there's a distinction between sexual acts and sexual behaviors. And I think it's very subjective, and it's a bit of an unclear question.
Please enlighten me. Because to me, sexual behaviors and sexual acts are probably the same thing, but their definition is like, I don't know, anything below the collarbone, or if you're underneath clothes, I don't know.
So sexual behaviors, to me, sound very much like acting in a way that would potentially lead to sex or sexual acts. Like flirting would be a sexual behavior.
Interesting.
Touching the person, like even in a non-sexual way, like on the shoulder or on the arm, depending on the context, could be seen as a sexual behavior.
Interesting.
Looking at someone like intensely could be a sexual behavior. To me, it's very much like the prelude to engaging in a sexual act.
Interesting. Wow. Trusting each other.
Absolutely.
So 83.8% of autistics, 95.2% of non-autistics. That's not surprising. Trust is important in a relationship.
Trust is the foundation, as I keep saying. Trust is the foundation of every relationship.
Are affectionate toward each other.
Again, that's a very subjective term to me. What is
hugging, kissing, holding hands?
Hugging, kissing, holding hands? I mean, obviously, yes, for me, then and now. Because in my mind, a relationship that is more than just friends, which is what the survey is about, would almost necessitate affection for each other.
It's 80% approximately for everyone.
Right.
in this
Because that's what you
Because
associate a
affection's
relationship.
important. Yeah, of course. Somebody that, what do you say? Like when you're in elementary school, ooh, little Johnny and little Debbie were holding hands. Like that's,
Right. Right.
Speak about our feelings and emotions to each other.
That is a bit complex, but I would have still said yes. But it's definitely much more, we'll call it like 102 rather than 101 relationship expectations.
Fully 20% less autistic people thought that was important than non-autistic.
And I can see that. Like, you know how hard it was for me to get to a point that was, commonplace or regular or unprovoked, uninquired about, for me to just spontaneously, that's what I'm looking for, spontaneously share my feelings.
Yeah, and we were friends forever. We all had issues with it.
I still had difficulty sharing my feelings, even to the present, like certain times. It's not that I have a difficulty, it's that I don't always remember that I can, or even identify what those feelings
What the feeling
are.
is.
Yeah.
Going on dates together.
So this one's a little bit interesting for me, because then I would have said yes. Now I would say no.
Right. But I mean, we're in a committed relationship. You can't date me every single day.
A date indicates that you're not in a committed relationship necessarily, because when you're trying to enter into a long-term relationship, at least in my mind, dating is kind of like
an interview.
It's kind of like an interview. It's kind of like taking your relationship on the road almost and seeing how it's like test driving a car. You don't know that you'll like the car if you don't like take it on a test drive or two just to see how it operates under certain circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But when you own the car, you don't necessarily always have to like take it for a joyride around the block to know that you like that car.
Exactly. Well, I mean, we've had date nights when we haven't been this busy. We're too busy now even to do that.
Yes.
But you can't date somebody every day that you're married to.
Every day is a date, especially if you're at the stage where you're living together, or of course if you're married.
Mm-hmm.
You're like what even is a date anymore? When I wake up,
I mean, you make me coffee and we sit and we have coffee.
We have
that's
coffee
a date.
in the morning. That's a date. When we, when I get the kids ready for school, back when you were like participating in that was like a date. We would like get the kids ready for school, and then we would sit and have breakfast together. That was a date. When we go grocery shopping, that's a date. Certain, like, there are dates where you're going grocery shopping. I mean, you could say that they're boring, a little bit more mature, but like, I
always turn it into fun. We usually go and get, again, a coffee. You'll notice that Moshe and I are big coffee people. We sit down.
The Jewish beverage of choice.
Yeah.
But yes, everything is a date. Every moment that we spend together is a date. Recording this episode is a date.
Yes, we're currently holding hands for those of you who are interested in knowing.
Yes, this is a date. Every time that we spend together is a date. So we don't have to go, okay, we need to go on a date.
Okay, we're getting off track. This is like the dishes. Remember when we talked about dishes for 45 minutes?
Yes. If you're lucky, we might release that to the general public. It's
pretty funny. We talked about how we couldn't get our daughter to do the dishes for about 45 minutes.
We just discussed dishes for like 45 minutes. Anyway.
So going on dates together, it was a pretty even spread with it not being that important to people actually. So 58% of autistic, 64% of non-autistic. Having the exact same interests.
I would say no, then and now.
You are not typical. Far more autistics thought that was important than non-autistics. So it was 64.7% of autistics said that you have to have the exact same interests as your partner, whereas only 37% of non-autistics said that. And that's not surprising knowing the stereotype, right?
Right. I was a very self-aware autistic. And
I think you also just didn't like your interests that much.
My interests were interesting, for lack of a better word. But you see, the point is, I always liked being introduced to other things that I wouldn't normally have done. When I spent time with you when we were children, I would do things that I wouldn't like normally do on my own. But they were fun, firstly because they were with you, and secondly because I wouldn't have thought about doing them otherwise, and I discovered that I actually kind of liked them.
Yeah.
Because if left to my own devices, I just kind of did my own thing. I was like a hamster running in a wheel. And I needed to sort of get out there and...
You're also pigeonholed. Everybody was like, how do we keep him busy? He's a boy, video games. And that lasted until an adult. And I don't even think you liked it that much, truthfully.
it was an expectation. Oh, he's a boy. He plays video games. Oh, he seems pretty smart. We should teach him about computers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, I guess I'll do the stereotype for a while.
Yeah. But that's what I mean by your interest didn't really interest you that much. Some did, like politics. Back in Canada, you were into politics, and that was really interesting for you, and you actually involved me in that. But it wasn't like a deal breaker that didn't come to relationship with that.
Right.
Do nice things for each other so that it's fair.
When we discussed this questionnaire before, I really didn't like the end of that statement. Do nice things for each other? Absolutely. So that it's fair. Like,
relationships are never fair. As you've mentioned, you almost exclusively prepare the kids for school now. Why? Because he's an early riser and I hate getting up early in the morning. That's not fair per se, but it worked.
The relationship dynamic stereotypically talks a lot about fairness. Oh, the couple, you have to be fair to each other. Yes, but also no, because the best kinds of relationships are where there are offsetting each other's interests. It's sort of like, to use an example, you don't mind washing the dishes. I don't mind drying the dishes. You don't mind, getting the kids from school. I don't mind getting the kids to school.
Exactly.
So we're both, doing things that are within our wheelhouse.
Yep.
Is it fair that I always have to get the kids ready for school?
No.
Not fair.
But I almost exclusively get him from the bus.
But I don't mind.
Exactly.
See, something being not fair doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, because certain things are more reasonable for others. You're a better cook than I am, but I can still cook.
You're a good cook.
You
don't have a great big repertoire, but you're good.
No, but I would say that you're a better cook. So expecting you to do all the cooking would be unfair. But
it's natural. It's a thing that happens most of the time when I'm available. But that's just because people like variety in the house.
That you do. But if you were like, you know what, I don't feel like cooking tomorrow, you're going to cook. I'd be like, sure, I'll cook. Hopefully you like very simple things, because that's basically all I can do. But I do it well, and I don't mind doing it, and I certainly don't complain about it.
Looks after me and provides for me. Oh, by the way, that one, people found it more important than you would think. It was about a 70% spread between all functionality types. Looks after me and provides for me.
I would say yes, absolutely.
73% of autistics, 83% of non-autistics.
Yeah.
I look after and provide for my significant other.
Yes.
It's almost the exact same spread. So at least they were fair there. Have open and honest conversations with each other.
See, for me, I would say yeah, but I would struggle to know what an open and honest conversation would look like.
Back then, now, or always?
Back then, for sure. Until, I don't know, the last year or so, even still.
Yeah, because honest just means you're telling things that are true, not what you think the other person wants to hear or whatever.
Exactly. And that's the point. Open and honest conversations could sometimes be disagreements. I am actually very unhappy with the way you do this, or it makes me uncomfortable when you act in this way. That's an open and honest conversation. It's not necessarily a very pleasant one.
Exactly.
But it's definitely an open and honest one.
Exactly. All right. So we're now moving on to sexual interests and desires. This part, I believe, was not shocking for us. We understood, but might be shocking to the general public in terms of how interested autistic people actually are in sex and sexual relationships.
Yes, because you look at these
stereotypes.
You look at these stereotypes if you're like watching The Good Doctor, you're watching Sheldon Cooper.
Actually, The Good Doctor was very sexual with his girlfriend.
But not initially. Initially, there was a lot of difficulty there.
True enough.
And of course, Sheldon
but it was more a
Cooper
planning thing, which honestly was kind of your problem too.
And the proximity and the bodily contact and presence of various textures, it's a whole thing. So stereotypically, when you think about neurodivergence or people with autism or autistics, we're gonna do a show, by the way, on the difference between autistics and people with autism and what's good and bad.
Oh, the politically correctness of that? Yeah.
But we're going to use those terms interchangeably. If one of them is offensive, I'm sorry, feel free to comment. But the stereotype for sure is that autistics are not that interested in sex.
Yeah, it's a stereotype, but it's not true.
Not at all.
Not in our experience, not in a lot of people's experience, and not according to the study either. So let's go through this part.
For sure.
I would like to have a significant other in the near future.
Back then, I would definitely have said yes.
So that's 77.9% and 88.5%. So
Reasonable.
high. I am or have been sexually attracted towards someone.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because 96.2% of non-autistic people said yes, which is what you would expect. And it's far fewer, but it's more than people think. 67.6% of autistics, and keep in mind young autistics, said that they are or had been sexually attracted to somebody.
So it's not a huge number, but it's definitely the I would say the vast majority, almost 7 out of 10 autistics who answered that said that they had. So sexual desire is not something that is absent when you're neurodivergent. It may be misplaced. It may be confusing. I know for me especially, I had a lot of trouble understanding that I felt it, but I also knew that I felt it. I just didn't always know what it felt like. So it was a bit interesting.
I would like to have sex with others.
At the time, I definitely would have said yes. Now I would certainly say yes.
Right. So again, it's basically the same spread, but more than you might think. 94.2% of non-autistics, not surprising. 67.6% of autistics felt that way. I want to be in a sexual relationship with another person.
So what's a sexual relationship?
I think it's a relationship that includes sex. So having sex with another person could be a friend you're having sex with or somebody you have sex with one time. When they're referring to sexual relationship, I think they mean like a regular boyfriend-girlfriend relationship or girlfriend-girlfriend, boyfriend-boyfriend relationship where you have sex.
See, if I heard that question posed to me, I would instantly think that it meant a relationship that was entirely based on sex and nothing else. So I would have said at the time, no.
Correct.
But now, knowing that your explanation is most likely what they meant, I would have said yes.
And the vagueness of the question shows in the answer because 85% of non-autistics said yes and 60% of autistics said yes.
Right.
I think that I will be in a sexual relationship in the future. And just so you know, Moshe doesn't see these answers, by the way. He's answering honestly. I'm the one who has the numbers in front of me. He doesn't see them.
Could you repeat the question?
I think that I will be in a sexual relationship in the future. Kind of not applicable to you, but
it's not applicable now. Several children later. But at the time, I would have said yes, tentatively, hopefully, but probably doubting that it would happen.
You're not the norm. 88% of autistics said they think they will be in a sexual relationship in the future, whereas 97% of non-autistics. My level of interest in sex and sexual topics is about the same or more than other people my age.
No.
You're absolutely correct. 91% of non-autistics, 60% of autistics said that. Still high though. Like 6 out of 10, it's still high.
That is pretty good.
Almost every neurotypical person said. I never or rarely think about sex and sexual behaviors.
No.
Almost no non-autistics answered that one. It's less than 10%. And autistics were slightly higher with almost 30%. Now this is a during the last month thing. During the last month, I have visited a website devoted to sexual education at least once a week.
At the time, I would have said yes.
I'm probably more likely to say yes to that now because of all the research I'm doing.
But now I would obviously say no.
It's very low. Literally zero non-autistics said so, and 6% of autistics said so. I chatted with someone on a dating website at least once a week.
No.
It's also very low. 7.4 for autistics, 3.8 for non. I watch pornographic or explicitly sexual photos or videos at least once a week.
At the time, yes.
Those who would admit it was actually approximately the same, 30 and 31.
Right.
I think that less non-autistic people admitted it, I think it's probably higher. I feel like the
so.
autistics are probably more honest about that.
I would think so, yes.
I masturbated while watching pornographic material at least once a week.
Yes,
I mean, you should be specific. Yes, then, not now, right?
correct.
I don't want people writing to me.
No. Now I don't have any need for it.
That's also pretty even spread, about 30%. And again, I suspect less non-autistics admitted it.
Yes.
Sexual strategies and motivations. If I wanted to have casual sex, having sex with someone without being in a couple or engaged in a long-term romantic relationship, I would. And the first one is kiss them.
So casual sex, no actual connection.
Mm-hmm. I would kiss them.
I would have said yes.
That's 30-30, 30-35. It's not high. Talk to them.
I mean, unless you're only hooking up with deaf people.
Yeah, this is a weird, I don't know how
I don't know how you can possibly
get to the sex part without
sign language, smoke signals, maybe write them a note, play a boombox outside their bedroom window. I don't know, like something. How do you do it without talking? That is something that I
So
don't
this
know.
actually interested me because more autistics said that it's important to talk to their hookups than non-autistics.
That completely tracks with what
Does it?
see. Yeah.
I found it interesting.
Because the stereotype would be
Fully 10% more, actually.
yes, because the
It's
stereotype
63 versus 73.
because the expectation with a non-autistic would be this is a hookup. We don't really need to make that connection. Whereas if you're an autistic, you have certain behaviors that you expect to be part of the process. And it is one of those things where it's like, I would like to hook up with you. All right. How would you like to, what would you like to talk about? Would you like to get something to eat? Would you like to spend time together? And they're like, no, you just swipe me on Tinder. Let's do it and part ways.
Right. Try to have the same interests as them. Remember, this is for a casual hookup.
Again, for an autistic, that would just seem to be the norm.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see that it would not be the norm if you're just trying to do casual.
You're right. It's statistically significant, actually. Less than 10% of non-autistics think that you should have the same interests as a hookup. 33.8% of autistics think that you should have the same interests as a hookup.
Right. Because it comes with like trust. Why would you be intimate with someone that you don't have anything in common with? It doesn't make any sense.
Give them something nice.
Again, I would have said yes.
That tracks as well. Less than 10% of non-autistics and 32% of autistics.
Yeah.
Sit next to them. Again, I don't know how you're putting your private parts together if you don't even sit next to them, but
I mean, I suppose we could like sit across the room from each other and then like jump on each other or something. But I mean, obviously I would have said yes.
So that's a weird question and also like a strange answer because it's like 34% for non-autistics and 44% for autistics. Watch them almost all of the time.
So I would say no because that's creepy.
So it's low, but it's lower for autistics, which is surprising because a lot of autistics get in trouble for staring and looking and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So 23% of non, 14% of autistics.
Right.
Tease them to get their attention.
The idea of teasing someone to get their attention, I don't really understand.
That also tracks here. So 46% of non-autistics would say they would, and only 22% of autistics say they would. Try to be around them almost all of the time.
See, for a casual hookup, I would say yes, but I can understand why that wouldn't make a lot of sense.
It's about 20% across the board. Nobody thought it was important. Ask them on a date.
Yeah.
About 50-50.
Yeah.
Tell others that I like the person.
I wouldn't tell others that I would like. No.
It's only about 20%. It's an even spread between the two. Tell them things about me that I think the other person would like.
I would have probably said no to that just because I never really like to talk about my feelings with other people. I never understood it because the times that I have shared my feelings with other people, they typically made fun of me.
Mm,
So I'm
that's hard.
Yes.
I mean, 17% of non-autistics and actually almost 40% of autistics would tell them things about themselves. Touch them. So the non-sexual sexuality we're talking about, like touch their arms, back, etc., to show them I'm interested.
Yes.
34% of non-autistics, only 27% of autistics. So you're different in your understanding that.
Interesting.
The reasons that I might have sex in the future or have in the past are because it feels good, just for enjoyment.
Yes.
48% of autistics, almost 80% of non-autistics.
Makes sense.
For fun.
No.
77% of non-autistics, 52% of autistics. Because we're friends.
It doesn't seem like that is applicable, so I would say no.
Yeah, it's pretty low. It's 7.7 for non-autistics, 2.9 for autistics. So they're not doing the friends with benefits thing. Because we are in a relationship.
Yeah.
66% of autistics, 82% of non-autistics. This one makes me feel kind of icky. To show them that I love them.
Yes.
It's 30% across the board. Because I feel like I have to.
Yes.
Then?
Well, then I wasn't actually having sex. But it would seem to me like being in a relationship with someone would mean that I would have to have sex with them.
I don't think that's what they mean.
No?
No.
What do you think they mean?
I think what they mean is like, I don't really want to, but I have to. So fine. Like doing the dishes or
right. That's not
washing the clothes.
That's not what I interpreted it as. I'm like, yes, I'm in a relationship. I have to have sex with them. Why wouldn't I?
Right. But I think it's more like, oh, I have to do the dishes again.
Oh, well, with that interpretation, no. Right.
It was very low, 5.9 and 4.8%. Because we are married.
Yeah.
It was actually very low. 11% and 18%.
I mean, as the main reason why we're having sex?
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, yeah, I guess. It depends. Reproduction.
Yeah.
So 38% of autistics and 54% of non-autistics.
Interesting.
Keep in mind these people are young, so they're probably trying to not get pregnant while they're having sex.
Makes sense. But if they do intend on having sex, seeing the main reason for them doing it as reproduction is still interesting, because maybe at that time they're not necessarily interested in having children. Or maybe they are. Maybe they've decided that they want children and they don't care how old they are.
Sexual dyadic experience. I have held another person's hand. Someone that you liked or were interested in.
Yes.
They just look down at our hands holding each other. Anyway, 70% of autistics, 89% of non. I have hugged another person.
Yeah.
88 and 97. I have kissed another person on the lips, mouth closed.
Yeah.
55% of autistics, 83% of non-autistics. So that is like a significant difference. Why do you think that is?
Because kissing can be uncomfortable for autistics. The whole concept of touching each other in general can be uncomfortable, even to the point of holding hands, if they're sensitive to touch and don't necessarily like being touched overall. So if you take the discomfort with touching and you add your mouth, it can be a bit more disconcerting.
I see it.
I never really had a problem with it, but I also wasn't particularly good at it.
I recall you actually not necessarily being fond of it.
I wasn't a big fan of kissing, mostly because I associated kissing with negative experiences. It was something that I was expected to do rather than something that I wanted to do. It was one of those, you have to do it because I'm your whatever partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, it doesn't matter. So you need to do it. And I was like, fine.
That's very interesting to me because whenever we kissed, it was kind of always you who initiated it.
Right. Because I had the understanding that I actually wanted to kiss you.
I mean, now I ask you for kisses, but I think you were always the first initiator whenever we would kiss.
I should have initiated more. But it was an uncomfortable experience that I was trying to turn into a comfortable experience with someone that I genuinely cared about.
Aw, that's really sweet. I have French kissed someone. This includes tongue.
Yes. At the time, no. But now, obviously, yes.
I mean, I kind of unknowingly kind of forced you into doing that because I didn't know that you didn't. So I did it.
I do it regularly now only because you do, but it wasn't necessarily something that I would do regularly prior to being in a relationship with you.
Aw, that's really sweet. So 38.2% of autistics and 77.9% of non-autistics. That tracks, right? For the whole sensory thing.
Right. Like you're going to stick your tongue in my mouth.
I mean, honestly, I didn't know that you didn't like it, so I just did it. And then eventually you kind of liked it.
I didn't know that I liked it, and I didn't particularly care for it, and then I associated it with you. I wouldn't like stick my tongue in everyone's mouth.
That's probably best considering when you get sick, you get really sick.
That's true. Today, it's just been you, and occasionally Avram.
Avram. I've had some form of sexual experience. Example, touching another sexually, foreplay, any sexual activity, oral sex, sexual intercourse, etc.
So at the time, depending on how old they are when the survey is being given.
Late teens, early 20s.
Late teens, early 20s? Oh,
like emerging adults.
I probably would have said yes, depending on what point it was at. Because I had sex late compared to most guys.
Yeah, but it's not I had sex with like somebody vaginal intercourse. It says I have had some form of sexual experience at all.
Yeah. I can, then yes.
So it's interesting because it's 40% for autistics, but that's fully 40% less than non-autistics at 81%. Have you ever had a significant other?
At the time, no. Now, obviously.
58.2% and 78.8%.
Good for them.
I enjoy using pornographic materials. That's kind of an interesting question because I think at any given point in somebody's life, they may or may not. And the interest in that waxes and wanes.
If you use pornographic materials out of sheer enjoyment, it kind of puts you into a class of your own, I think. I would have said no at the time. I would say no now. But I mean, that's mostly based on the word enjoy.
Right. That's really interesting. That's like a whole discussion. I just wanted to let you know it's about 50% with slightly more non-autistic people saying they enjoy using pornographic materials. But what does the word enjoy mean to you? Like,
it means like, you go to a movie, you enjoy that movie. You play a sport, you enjoy that sport.
Right.
I enjoy politics. I enjoy reading. I enjoy watching movies and shows with you. I enjoy going to a nice restaurant. I enjoy, going for walks. Pornography is not really an enjoyment. It's really more of a task-based experience.
Then I mean, stupid me, but I have to ask, why would anybody ever use it if they didn't enjoy it?
I don't know. I guess I'm just strange. The whole concept of pornography was always very interesting to me because I never understood it. I never really understood what I was supposed to gain from it.
It depends. For some people, it's educational.
Well, education, yes. But again, if you're gaining your sex education from pornography, then you're getting a very skewed education.
Yes and no. It depends if you're looking for the actual physical, like, characteristics or not. Obviously, don't get your, like, romance or whatever off of it. But if you're looking for what slot goes into what tab and what, it's fine for that, I find.
I mean, for the purposes of that, but mostly my experience has been, I don't understand. Like, why would you do that? I don't feel like that would be.
Like, why would the people on the screen do that?
Yeah.
Most people don't think that. Most people don't care.
Yes.
So that's one reason you could be looking at it, because you're curious or you need some education on the literal, like, tab A goes into slot B and this
Right.
is how
If
that
you want to know
works.
how actual sex works
Thing.
from like a live performance standpoint, but.
And people who are more experienced will often use it to get physically turned on faster so they can get masturbation over with. It's true.
I mean, the first pornographic movie I watched was when I was quite young. And I remember just kind of sitting there watching it and going, she looks really dirty. I don't, if I was that man, I wouldn't touch her. She seems like a bit of she seems like she needs a shower. She looks very shiny. I don't know that she's actually enjoying herself that much. I don't feel like this is going exactly the way that she was hoping it would.
I don't think that pizza delivery man loves that cheerleader. You're so unique in that way. Like, what's their motivation? They're not actors, Moshe. They're just, people use porn for two things, for learning or for just getting off much faster because doing it yourself isn't that fun.
I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
That's why you're wonderful.
Thank you.
Negative sexual experiences or worries. I have agreed to have sex with someone and regretted it afterwards.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately a lot of people, 26.5% of autistics, 33.7% of non-autistics.
Mm.
I have agreed to have sex with someone that I didn't really want to.
Yeah.
It's about the same spread, and that's actually very sad. I have been the victim of unwanted sexual advances or behaviors from others.
Yeah.
On this, I would like to see the spread of genders, which they don't show, but it is approximately 27 and 26%.
Mm. Interesting.
I have initiated a sexual behavior with someone, even though I didn't really want to.
Yeah.
That is a guy thing, I think. I don't understand that. About 23% and 20%. But I think that's a boy thing. Like, I'm a guy, I'm a dude, so I have to do this thing. Because I would never. If I didn't feel like doing it, I wouldn't initiate.
Unfortunately for me, there's like an expectation.
I have been teased or victimized by other people because I didn't know as much about sex as they did.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's not nice. It's 13% of non-autistics and 19% of autistics. Gratefully, it's not that as many as I thought it would be, but it's slightly more. I'm worried that my sexual behaviors might be misunderstood by people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 16% of non-autistics, 38.8% of autistics. And that tracks for me.
Yes, that's definitely.
Because as you said, you're like, wow, we're holding hands. We're having sex now, right? Like, your understanding of that is totally different than mine. Like, if you're not touching me below the collarbone and under my clothes, it's not sexual.
Right.
I worry that I may be taken advantage of.
Yes.
38% and 33%, respectively. Again, I'd like to see the gender.
Right, of course.
Because you and I are very different that way in terms of our genders. Normally, the females are more apt to be victimized or feel a certain way, whereas males are not, and you and I are flipped in that. Sexual education and privacy knowledge. I don't know much. I would like to know more about sexuality.
I mean, at the time, absolutely yes. Now, not so much.
15% of non-autistics, a full 42% of autistics. That totally tracks.
Mm.
I know about the same or much more than most people my age.
No.
57% of autistics, they're lying. 84% of non-autistics.
Yeah.
It was easy for me to understand the sex education that I received.
No.
48.5% of non-autistics, or autistics, 79.9% of non-autistics.
Yeah.
I would like to know more about sexuality and sexual health.
At the time, yes, but not now, obviously.
57% and 60%. So it's not super high. Who taught you what things and actions should be done in private? It's not necessarily talking about sex anymore, but just like private action.
Things that you do in privacy.
Yeah. My parents.
No.
They didn't teach you what to do in privacy?
No.
It's like fully 60% of autistics and 51% of non-autistics. My brothers or sisters.
No.
That's very low. You're correct on that. My friends.
No.
23% and 28% respectively. My grandparents.
I can honestly tell you I have not discussed sex with any of my grandparents at any point.
It's very low, 5.9 and 4.8%. My teachers.
I have had sex education teachers, and obviously privacy was definitely part of their lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously I didn't get the majority of my knowledge from there. It was just one of those things that they talked about.
35.3% and 24% respectively. My counselor or support worker. This one's a huge spread. I can tell you right away. 7.7% of non-autistics and 27.9% of autistics, because they're way more likely to have a counselor or support worker.
Exactly.
People on TV or movies.
When it comes to what to do privately, I don't know that anyone on TV or movies has really specifically said anything.
It's scary high. It's like 29% and 32%. I learned on my own or worked it out for myself.
Yes. For me, that's how it worked.
Yeah. So 65% of non-autistics and less, 47% of autistics, but it's still a lot. I've mostly learned about sex-related topics from my parents.
No.
It was low for everyone. My brothers or sisters.
No.
It was like 0. Okay. So I feel good about that. That's like 0.
Yeah.
My friends.
No.
This is an interesting one. 7.5% of autistics said that they did. 30% of non-autistics said that they did. I
mean, I guess non-autistics talk about sex with their friends a lot.
I identify with that experience. We can do a show on it maybe. We'll see. School.
I have, again, had sex ed classes that discuss that.
38.8% of autistics, 24% of non. Reading.
That's for sure a yes from me.
It's very low for most people. 9% of autistic and less for non-autistic. Services such as counseling or a community program.
No.
Almost non-existent, less than 2% across the board. TV, movies, and internet.
Yes.
11 and 14% respectively. None.
So
I've learned sex from nothing.
But I don't know anything about sex.
6% and 7%. I've been taught the importance of using contraception.
Yeah.
Almost 100% across the board. Having tests for STIs.
Not really, no.
Almost 10% fewer autistics than non-autistics. Not making important decisions about sexual activities while affected by alcohol or drugs.
I wasn't actually taught that.
It is high. It's 83% and 87%. But I do believe that's probably a generational thing because they didn't actually talk about that in the 90s.
Not really. I had some pretty skewed opinions. And then, of course, there was like the whole, super bad.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Nerds thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'll still probably engage in sex if I've had a little too much to drink, but that's, again, it's a generational thing.
Yeah, well, then you would never have sex.
Oh, stop it. The sexual activities that should be engaged in only in private are kissing someone.
No.
It's low, but a lot more autistics thought so. Almost 10% more. Touching someone in a sexual way in private.
Yes.
I'd like to say that your autistic brothers and sisters are very respectful at 92%, but non-autistics are only 84%. What's wrong with us? You're just like touching your boyfriend's junk in public? Like, what's happening there?
I mean, right there.
Undressing the person.
In public?
That should be done in private.
Well, yes, obviously.
Yeah, 97% of people agreed with that. Versus 95, again, holistics. What is wrong with you? Why are you so loosey-goosey on this? Sexual behaviors other than intercourse should be private.
Yes.
89 and 88%. Sexual intercourse should be private.
Yes.
94 and 89%. Again, what is wrong with these non-autistic people?
So 1 in 10 non-autistic people feel that sex should be a public spectacle.
Yes. I'm ashamed.
I don't know.
Sexual identity and orientation. I clearly identify myself as the gender that I was born.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Most non-autistics agree, 95.2%. Only 73.5% of autistics agree.
That is surprising.
It is not for me because I've seen it a lot. I consider myself as transgender. 1.9% of non-autistics, 8.8% of autistics.
Hmm.
I consider my sexual orientation to be hetero.
At the time, I would have said no.
I mean, it's a good majority, 71% of non-autistics and 63% of autistics. So it's definitely the majority. Homosexual, attracted to the same sex.
No.
1% of non-autistics, 9% of autistics.
Hmm.
Bisexual.
At the time, I would have said yes.
That is kind of even. It's almost 20% of non-autistics and 14% of autistics. Asexual, attracted to neither sex.
No.
This is interesting because a lot of autistics are portrayed as asexual, and it is higher, but it's actually very low. So 1% of non-autistics feel that they're asexual. Only 6% of autistics think that they are asexual. So hardly a stereotype in my humble opinion.
Interesting.
And are questioning, not sure what I'm attracted to.
I would probably go with yeah at the time.
Yeah. It's like around 7% for both. That was a pretty even spread. So that was the end of the questionnaire. Do you have any last thoughts before we take off?
So the understanding that autistics and neurodivergence are, non-physical, non-sexual, non-romantic, just computer people is absolutely untrue. Autistics are people with feelings and emotions and desires and interests. And the fact that a lot of the time we lack the ability to understand some nuance or the ability to gauge people's feelings or reactions doesn't preclude the fact that we are all interested in something, some kind of connection.
So if a non-autistic person is interested in an autistic person in that way, romantically or sexually, or even, I don't know, in a close friendship, what is something or the main thing that they can do to help that person communicate with them?
It really kind of comes along with the way you and I have learned to interact. You do have to be very clear with your intentions. You can't rely on signs and signals. You really do have to be forceful. And with autistics, you sometimes have to make the first move, because when you don't have the ability necessarily to read people, it's going to cause a lot of misconstrued intentions. So if you are someone, whether you're neurodivergent or neurotypical, and you like someone, don't fall into the defined gender role. Be the one who goes over and says, I would like to spend time with you in a romantic sense.
Right.
So.
And do you think that autistics would be open to that? Because that is sort of the opposite of what non-autistic people would do.
I would feel that an autistic person, especially one who would be interested in a romantic relationship, would be far more likely to pursue one if they knew the interests of a prospective partner. They may not necessarily be quick to warm up. There might need to be a lot of work in learning how to coexist as a couple, even on a date.
Mm-hmm.
Autistic people are often very awkward and they misunderstand intentions. So you have to be patient. You have to be understanding. You have to be someone, especially if you're dating somebody who's autistic, you have to be someone who is willing to work with them. And in the end, you're going to end up with a relationship that's very, very loyal. Because I would say from experience, even though I am just one autistic, that autistic people don't necessarily have the concept of duplicity or disloyalty. And if you are someone that an autistic person has come to trust and associate with safety and security, then they're far less likely to stray or want to be with anyone else. Because a lot of the time it's just too, it's a lot.
It's too icky.
It's too, like once you assign a role to somebody, having to change your routine to be with someone else is often very difficult.
And that's true, because one of the problems that you've had, though I wasn't any the wiser, is that you assigned that role to me very early. And then for whatever reason tried to make things work with other people.
Right. And I didn't know that it was possible for me to give you a different role. What I was really looking for was for you to say, we can be boyfriend and girlfriend if you want. And my answer would have been, really? Then I want.
Aww.
And that's how it would have gone.
Right. Well, I think that's all the insight we have on that for now. We're definitely going to be doing more episodes about very specific things regarding sex and sexuality, but we will let you know.
Thank you for listening. And again, rate, comment, and
share. Download.
Yeah, download. Just
subscribe.
Spread far and wide, and help us to spread our message of coexistence and understanding as far as you can. Have a nice day.
Well, that's our show for today. Now you know one autistic just a little bit better. So something you may not know about some autistics is that we often struggle with ending social interactions. So, Leah?
All right, Moshe, I'll take care of it. Thank you for listening to Now You Know One Autistic. See you next week.